The Riddle of Loyalty Chapter 1, The Perfect Life in a Small but Picturesque Town, hidden between green hills and a river that flowed out of a cozy lake, lived a young couple, Sergei and Anastasia. Their lives seemed ideal, a beautiful apartment, cozy evenings reading books, joint trips and the fruits of common hobbies. They shared all this with each other with love. But over time, cracks began to appear under the brightness of everyday life. Anastasia, a successful graphic designer, began to constantly stay late at work. Sergei, the editor-in-chief of a local publication, was also immersed in his own affairs, and the gaps between them became more and more noticeable. Chapter 2, The Appearance of a New Person. One day, at a creative meeting, Anastasia met Igor, a charismatic photographer, a lover of adventures and a free spirit. He inspired her with his outlook on the world and his carefree attitude, which contrasted so strongly with the routine of her life. Their friendship began to develop, and soon a strong emotional connection arose between them, although Anastasia tried to control herself. Seryoja sometimes noticed changes in his wife's behavior. She began to smile more often and spent a long time watching the horizon, lost in her thoughts. Doubts crept into his soul, but he decided that life itself sometimes requires just a little space. Chapter 3, Heart Crack. Nastya and Igor began to meet on walks in the park, began exchanging messages and then secretly hugged, enjoying the time spent together. The first sparks in her heart flashed like a bolt from the blue. She often returned from walks in mental turmoil, filling her life with something new and forbidden. Sergei, who had no reason to doubt his wife's fidelity, continued to love her. He bought her flowers, tried to create romance, but she no longer responded the way she used to. They began sleeping in separate rooms. Nastya sought the comfort of one embrace, and Sergei did not understand what was happening. Chapter 4, Soul Break. If Sergei only knew how Anastasia's heart was really changing. She was torn between her duty to her husband and the confusion that arose from her feelings for Igor. One rainy evening, she made a decision. On the way to Igor, she felt like she was walking towards her happiness, to the woman she once knew how to be. It was their first real date. They shared indescribable feelings, burning with passion and unity. Nastya realized that this was what she was missing. Unexpectedly, for her, this became not just a physical betrayal, but a spiritual defection. Chapter 5, Unrepentant Love. With each new meeting with Igor, Anastasia sank deeper into an emotional whirlpool. Her life was filled with bright moments, but each of them was like a lightning strike for Sergei. He did not suspect what was happening. Sometimes he felt that somewhere in the world, the long-suffering love of his wife was lifting his soul, but for some reason not in his. One day, when Anastasia met Igor again in a restaurant, she saw a familiar face. It was their mutual friend, who was a new close friend of Sergei. He noticed her, but did not make a comment. The setting at the table seemed ideal, but Anastasia's feelings showed something else: time for the environment, but most of all for herself. Chapter 6, Ghosts of the Past. Sergei, whose heart never stopped loving Anastasia, once again completely immersed himself in her hobby. He began to take an interest in graphic design. One day, he decided to prepare a surprise for her and create a personal website with her works. He looked for her inspiration, mixed elements and looked for how this world could be shown to his beloved. The work got on the right track, but he managed to notice that traces of correspondence between Anastasia and Igor remained on the computer. They discussed her projects, but sincere words of love also penetrated there. His heart was breaking with pain, and he realized that at the right moment his girlfriend was not only busy, but also loved another. Chapter 7, Embraces of Broken Hearts. Despite this realization, Sergei decided not to destroy the family and left the house for a few days so that Anastasia could realize what was happening. Time allowed her to think, and in this silence between them she realized that she did not want to lose Seryoja. When they met again, Sergei opened his soul and voiced his experiences, but Nastya knew that there was some kind of duty, and she had to tell Sergei the truth. "I love you. But I allowed myself to love another." Chapter 8, Difficult Decisions. Sergei was shocked and incredibly disappointed. He didn't even know how to react. They spent nights discussing all the inconsistencies and disagreements that had led them here. Every word she said was like a lightning strike, but he refused to go into a complete separation. He refused to forgive and decided to forgive. Nastya was also in agony. Igor offered her a new life full of travel and Chapter 9, rethinking. A few days passed and they still stayed together, but there was an exciting note of uncertainty in the air. Anastasia decided that she needed to clarify everything and talk honestly with Igor. She broke off relations with him, hardly understanding that each of them needed time. The final conversation with Igor was difficult. They understood each other, but Nastya realized that no fairy tale can replace true love. It was not just the realization of a lost dream, but also a step towards the future. Chapter 10, New Life. Sergei and Anastasia began to work on their relationship, trying to rediscover each other. They recreated the very spark that once united their hearts. It was not easy, but both rose with fragile hopes and interactions. Time passed and Anastasia gained confidence in herself. She began to write, keep a blog, and Sergei actively supported her, as he once did. Together they created their new cozy world, where not only physical but also spiritual connection was important. Chapter 11, Inspiration and Care. Although the wound remained, closeness with Igor left traces. Nastya and Sergei came to the understanding that it is precisely such difficult trials that make them stronger. We managed to get closer and increase the level of trust, and now they can be proud of their end-to-end honesty. So they continued to build a new one, based on sincerity and careful love, uniting in common hobbies and creating a bright future together. Epilogue. The power of forgiveness. A year later, they celebrated the anniversary of their new life, had a little fun and many photos with some of the emotions. The past did not leave them, but with it they only became stronger. This story is not about how to survive an external conflict, but about how to maintain inner peace, strengthening your feelings even after previous trials. The main realizations were the understanding of spiritual unity and fidelity to one's own choices.